Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Japanaholic podcast, the one-man podcast surrounded by topics all about Japan, anime, and games, discussed by one certified Japanaholic. I am your host, Taylor Frey, and today, once again, on another Saturday episode here in the beautiful month of August, the shitty year of 2020, I'm back in my living room where last podcast episode audio wasn't that bad, so I decided to come back and come back with a vengeance of another rambling episode. Who fucking knew? Yeehaw. So today, judging by the title of not only the video and the audio, you've come here for anime recommendations, but not anime recommendations per se to the listener currently listening to this. Maybe the person listening to this is trying to get somebody to be a new fan of anime. I've been in that situation before. I think everybody's been in this situation before. So what better way to do that than to have this episode on, whether you're in a car, plane, or even in your house. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll have some animes to show off to some of your non-anime friends, to try to get them into anime. Now, I thought about this after last week's episode where I said that I showed one of my friends who wasn't an anime fanatic at the time, the Konosuba. How the fuck did that happen? Hold up. So, before I continue on, I got interrupted by my goddamn monitor on my TV. I had a black wallpaper on my screen that like flash stuff when it was showing off colors whenever I was speaking, which was pretty cool. And then it randomly switched to a K-On opening. What the fuck? Hold on a minute. I thought about this after I got done with last week's episode, where I said that I showed one of my buddies who wasn't an anime fanatic at the time the Konosuba dub, and I was like, there may be somebody here who wants to get somebody in anime, but doesn't know like the animes to show, okay? So looking for recommendations, where would he turn? Probably to this podcast episode. Hopefully, depending on many different cases, okay? Now, don't worry, because even though I may be mostly a slice of life romance kind of guy, and as well as a very big K-On fan, judging by the shirt and the fact that I got interrupted by a K-On opening for whatever reason, I swear to God I didn't time that. Okay, I have decided to give off at least one anime from each genre that I would recommend showing to somebody who is not an anime fan, or at least who is trying to get into anime. Okay? Now, you can take this as you can also watch this anime if you haven't yet already to see how good this show may actually be. And I'm going to try and base this off of a lot of different genres that I've seen. Some of them which may like core, or like there may be more than one for each genre. I'll try my best to not do more than like 100 by the end of this episode. So, you know, I'm hopefully gonna try to not recommend like 100 different comedies and like 5 fantasies or something like that. As well as I'm going to try and stay away from the mainstream animes, because yes, as amazing those shows can be, like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Attack on Titan, even though personally I don't like Attack on Titan, but that's just me, Demon Slayer, which I also personally don't like, but that's also just me, and, you know, just the big animes in general that obviously everybody would show if, you know, they were looking to become an anime fanatic, okay, or an otaku. Literally just say otaku, you dumb shit. Anyway, I'm going to try and pick from a few smaller shows, like ones that really don't have more than 100 episodes, at least as of recording this, because there may be some that may get over 100 episodes sometime in the near future. There is that chance, you never know, okay? So I'll try to keep things not to a like mainstream level, okay? If I do say one that is mainstream, whoops, I'll try to recommend some that may be a little more unknown, because my personal thing is that I feel like, this is just me, before I get into like the actual recommendations that I'll pick from my Annie list thing on my phone, That's why I'm holding my phone. Don't worry. I won't hurt anybody. Anyways, okay. I feel, this is just me and I could be wrong, but as somebody who's only been into anime for like a little over a few years now, not very long, okay? I personally have not seen any of like the big mainstream shows like One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, or Naruto. The biggest reason is because of the quantity of episodes. There are a shit ton of episodes to watch for all of those series. I just find no confidence to sit down and watch that many episodes, okay? Now, I am just one person on a one-man podcast. Literally, anybody who's watching this or listening to this could easily sit down and watch those kinds of shows, okay? And I'm not saying you shouldn't, or I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying the shows I'm going to recommend are going to be shows that possibly only have like a maximum of 36 episodes. I say possibly because there's obviously going to be more in some cases and less in others. But I'm going to show off these shows because I feel like, and this is coming from experience, mainly, if you watch a show that only has like 12 episodes and no season 2, you're more likely going to try and look for other animes that are like this show, okay? And expand your taste, as I'll call it, from there. That's how I started with watching anime. When I watched my first romance show, which was a 1-season, 12-episodic thing that aired like, you know, in the middle of like the seasonal times, okay, which is still happening now. So I don't know why I say it as if it wasn't happening it's not happening now. But after I watched that, I was like, okay, time to watch more and more shows like this. And as well as I started to watch like some like seasonal animes in a nutshell video by Giguk, okay, which also helped me expand my taste, as I'll say. So there's also that. I just feel like many times when you watch a show that doesn't have like a second season, or it has like not too many episodes, people will want more, so they watch more shows, and that expands their taste, which means they'll get into more genres, which means more animes they watch, which means they become more and more of a freaking weeaboo. But that's just me. So, without further ado, hopefully without any interruptions from my monitor screen, hopefully, I'm guessing I think that'll be fine to not get interrupted by a K-On! Opening anymore. Thank God audio was turned off, because if it was on, there would have been some loud music in the background. My neighbors would have heard that probably, as if they couldn't hear me enough. Let's get into some anime recommendations, shall we? I'll try, like I said, to not really talk a whole lot about like one specific genre. I'll try and recommend a lot of different genres and a lot of different combinations, I'll also say, of genres, to where a lot of people will probably find their big taste, okay? The first one I want to talk about, I will talk about isekais, okay? For any of the new anime people who do not know what, like, isekais are, okay? Or if you do know, but you know, don't know how to explain it to the person who's the up-and-coming otaku, I'll say. Basically, an isekai is somebody who gets transported to another world. So, there's that. And yes, there are differences between isekais and fantasies. Fantasy is the series already starts off with the world basically built in place. Kind of like, for example, Attack on Titan, where the world is kind of like already in place that, you know, there's titans fucking up everybody and killing people and big walls being made every once in a while to stop these titans. But, you know, they don't work because titans, of course. So there's that. But then you get isekais like, here's the first recommendation, ReZero. Now, ReZero is at the top of my isekai list. Not just because it's still airing to this day, because, you know, second season's still kicking ass. God damn, do I love the second season. I still say that ReZero is one of my favorite isekai shows I've ever watched. No matter how like depressed and upset it can make me feel at times seeing our poor protagonist get mutilated every once in a while. But I do recommend White Fox's ReZero because of the fact that the story and the world gets built up like over time. It builds up, but it's the perfect kind of build up to where people just want more and more of it. Now, the whole thing with ReZero's like main spule, as I'll call it, where the character returns by death and stuff like that, basically a respawn. Um, there are some times where it kind of gets used to the point, like when it gets overused, you'll know it gets overused. There is some points in like season 1 where he just keeps dying over and over, and it's like, oh my god, can he just beat this fucking boss already? Because man, I'm getting sick and tired of having to see the same interactions. I'm just getting deja vu. But that's like the only con I have about ReZero. And it's not even that big of a con. It's literally like, that's what makes the series good in some ways, I guess. So if you're if your up and coming otaku friend is looking for like a show just, with like a different world and kind of like video game-ish kind of tactics or strategies, or just a video game kind of thing in general, special ability, then I would show ReZero. But if we are speaking about games, let's talk about New Game. I would recommend New Game to the new and up and coming otaku as one of the slice of life shows to watch. Or I'm not going to call it a slow burner, because the slow burner is, you'll know a slow burner when you watch it. I'll recommend one. I think everybody will know which one I'm talking about here soon. But a slice of life show that revolves around like being an adult and being a game developer. I think most otakus love that kind of show, especially when a lot of the girls look like they're in high school. Just saying. But when I was watching New Game, I felt incredibly inspired, okay, as somebody who wanted to become a game developer as well. But I can't code worth shit, and I don't have the patience to be a game developer. But I love games, so there's that. New Game, I would recommend to anybody who's just looking for like a show to watch to see what the majority of anime is, okay? Because there are some like fantasy shows and ecchi shows, and I'll get to more of those in a minute. But for the slice of life shows, you'll get shows like New Game and a few others I'll talk about soon, where, you'll sit down, you'll watch it, and you can just be entertained by the characters and their amazing voice works. And the animation style is so amazing. I love New Game, and I couldn't recommend this series enough to anybody who hasn't seen it, A, and B, is looking to become more of an anime otaku. As well as, let's go ahead and let me transition over to music. Now, I really didn't want to talk about this until now, but since I got interrupted by K-On! Earlier, I gotta talk about it already. So, K-On! I talked more about this in the Koito Animation podcast episode, where I gave off 5 Koito Animation shows that everybody should watch or rewatch pretty much ASAPO, okay? K-On! Was one of them, because I really think that if anybody watches K-On!, they will instantly love anime for the rest of their life, or at least respect what anime is, okay? Because the year may be 2020 and the year may be shit, but anime has been growing a lot lately in the past like few years, which is amazing, okay? But the one thing that's always stayed the same is the fact that K-On! Is such a good series, and I would watch it pretty much the first anime to show off the up-and-coming otaku if they're really into music, especially rock music, but just music in general. So, if you really want to show somebody good animation, good characters, and just all around a wholesome show, K-On!, okay? Show them K-On!. It is one show I can't recommend enough to literally anybody who wants to watch a wholesome show. But wholesome shows don't stop there, because a wholesome show that I would recommend watching, and also reading, because obviously it's not going to get a second season anytime soon, but I would recommend watching it and reading it afterwards. the Hattori Mochi series. Now, I'm one for wholesome shows. I love me some wholesome shows, okay? I'll talk about a slow burner wholesome show here, probably last. Save the best for last, of course. But wholesome shows, I cannot talk about wholesome shows without Hattori Mochi. I also could put Senko-san in here, but I put Hattori Mochi on here mainly. I'm mainly going to talk more about Hattori Mochi just because of the fact that Hattori Mochi is more realistic, okay? Realistically wholesome. Because it deals with a girl who's in middle school who just transfers over to a brand new school, and she does not have any friends whatsoever because her only friend in elementary school is not going to the same middle school as her, and the goal is to try and be friends with everybody in her class, but she is very, very antisocial, and that's not really possible near the start of the series, which then becomes more and more possible as she becomes to be more friends with a few other amazing characters, okay? I can't recommend this show enough just because of the fact that if anybody could really, like, relate to Mochi, it's literally any, like, high schooler or middle schooler at the time, where when they go to a new school, they just feel like a huge budget, like a huge batch of anxiety build up in them because it's like, new school? Scary times. Somebody who's been through that like 3 times. Actually 5 times, I'll admit. Okay. From elementary to middle school to high school. Even a few times where I had to jump shift between schools every once in a while. It's not fun switching schools and meeting new people when you're young. Unless you're not that kind, unless you're a very like hyperactive person and don't feel that kind of social anxiety. But for the most part, a lot of people have social anxiety going to like new schools. And an anime about social anxiety is a show I would recommend watching. Even if you haven't seen it, okay? Watch it and show your friend this. Or at least show your friend this while you're watching it for the first time. Because I can't tell you enough how much I would recommend this show. It is amazing. Amazing stuff, okay? And it aired just last year, so it's still fresh on everybody's minds. Okay. So, with that out of the way, I think we can go from wholesome to something not so PG. Let's talk ecchi. I'm not talking H stuff, because if I said the H word, I'll probably get demonetized. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ecchi. There are a few shows from the ecchi category that I would like to talk about. Some of them are very ecchi to the point where they get over the border of ecchi and into hentai. I'm not talking about interspecies reviewers because while that is a good show to watch, it is almost impossible to find that show nowadays because, well, Funimation decided to take it off after 3 episodes because it was hentai. So, I can't talk about interspecies reviewers because it is hentai, technically. But, there is one show that I've seen, that not a lot of people have seen recently, that needs to be seen. And I would recommend watching this if you're looking for some spicy stuff, okay? If you've seen this podcast enough, especially in the underrated episode, where I talked a lot about shows that are very underrated, which, by the way, a lot of shows that I'm talking about today come from that show, or from that episode. Fuck off, Snapchat. Last week was fucking Twitter, now it's Snapchat. Ah! Watch, next week it'll probably be Tinder. I don't fucking know. There's a plastic bag outside my house, too. I'm going to slap the fuck out of whoever put that out there. You've probably already heard me talk about this if you've seen that episode already. If not, please go listen to that podcast episode where I talk a lot about underrated shows, or at least shows that a lot of people have not talked about. Because the one that I think a lot about in that show, in that episode, was Yosuga no Sora. Now, this was based off of a eroge, as I'll call it, because as it is a visual novel, there are also some pretty spicy scenes in this series, okay? And it is not, I would not recommend showing this to any family members because of the fact that there is some incest involved in this. Okay? However, any new otakus coming out of the otaku closet, if you're looking for very ecchi stuff to watch, Yasuga no Sora may be that. I will say, though, I will probably talk more about Yasuga no Sora in a Weeb Reviews, as I've been... There it is again with Snapchat. God fucking damn it. Shit! I actually just threw my phone and dropped it. As I have seen some people not really talk about Yasuga no Sora in the past several years, which has to be talked about because that series is probably the most amazing ecchi series I've ever seen in my entire life. Okay, and I've seen so many ecchi shows. I'm an 18-year-old. I'm a degenerate. Okay, let me have my degenerate moments. Okay, so Yasuga no Sora came out in the year of 2010, a decade ago. So I can understand in one aspect as to why people don't talk about it that much anymore. Mainly because of the fact that it is such an old show. And shows that usually air 5 years are past their expiration date. And most people don't talk about them. There are a few examples as to shows that are still being talked about to this day. That are like more than 5 years old, obviously. But Yasuga no Sora is unfortunately one of those shows that gets talked about, I believe, the least. Because of the fact that, as popular as the show was when it first aired back in 2010, it slowly fell off of a cliff. I can understand that in a few ways because a part of the build-up in stories, the story developments and stuff like that is a bit slow compared to other shows that I've seen and even list off in today's podcast episode. However, I would still recommend watching it if you are looking to be in a very rising mood. And I'm not talking about the Shield Hero Rising, which is a good show if we are talking about other isekai shows. Rising of the Shield Hero is another one that I would recommend watching just because of the fact that all the characters in that show are amazing. Okay, well, except the main male protagonist. He kind of is a bitch. But speaking of main male protagonists that could use a slap in the face every fucking minute of their existence, let's talk about Kanasho wo Kainishimasu, which was a thing on this podcast where I did a watch along with me and Alex not too long ago, actually, where we sat down and watched the first episode. If we're talking about harems and romance, that's a show I would recommend watching, or at least reading, because I don't think that'll get a season 2. But Kanasho wo Kainishimasu is a show that I would recommend showing off to literally anybody who wants to become a romance nerd or whatever, okay? I'm going to list off a few more romances here in the next few minutes, but obviously Kanasho wo Kainishimasu is one of them. But if you want the real OG of romance or harems in general, you turn to Nissa Koi. I will not talk about quintessential quintuplets because as I do love the series, I still say Nissa Koi is better than the quintessential quintuplets. That's an unpopular opinion, and I'm going to get shat on by somebody in the comments section down below or whatever. Which, by the way, before I talk about Nissa Koi, let me first talk about how you would be able to contact me in case you want to ask me any questions or give me any topics to talk about. I have an email, which is japanaholicpc@gmail.com, in case you want to be featured on an episode where I can talk about whatever you want me to talk about in terms of questions, stories, or just a topic in general that's about Japan, anime, or even games. Because even though I haven't talked about games that much in this podcast, we can talk about games. Give me a game to talk about, and if I've played it in the past, I will probably talk about it. As well as if you also, think it may be faster, you can go on the YouTube channel, which is the Japanaholic channel, and comment on any of the podcast episodes, and I'll probably read it and either laugh at how terrible the English may be, even though I'm a hypocrite because my English just screwed up right there, and English may not be my first language, even though I've lived in America for all my fucking life, but hey, I failed English, remember? Just go ahead and comment down questions, comments, concerns, or whatever. There's a Twitter notification, so 2 weeks in a row for that. But let's go and talk about Nissa Koi. Now, Nissa Koi's Second season, I would really recommend reading, not really so much watching, because there are some rushed parts of that series. However, the first season, without a doubt, it showcases the best that Harem can offer. Shaft Studios, I cannot recommend anything from Shaft Studios enough. A lot of the Monogatari series, as much shit as that series gets on Twitter, that series is an incredible series to watch. You just have to watch a complicated watch order. But I'll talk about watch orders here in just a moment with another series that I want to recommend to everybody. At least, that you would recommend to somebody who's not an otaku. Alright, so Nissa Koi, perfect harem series to watch and read, because as everybody knows who wins it if they've already seen the series, which, best girl, by the way. The build up to all the characters and everything about this series deserves to be talked about in a very positive way. So, if you're looking for a harem series to recommend to somebody, there's that one, Ekajo Okaishimasu. Now, I said I would stay away from the mainstream animes to recommend, but I'm sorry. I have to talk about Steins Gates. I really, really, really need to, because I wholeheartedly believe that if you recommend somebody Steins Gates and they watch it all, and I mean all, from the first episode of the first season all the way to the end of the second season and even the movie and stuff like that, they would fall in love with anime instantly, because oh my god, I seriously love this series so much, because it may be supernatural, it may be scientific to the point where if you're not a scientist, you're going to lose track of almost everything possible in the series, but still a good series. Still a very good series nonetheless. I can't recommend Steins Gates enough, okay? Now, another series I cannot recommend enough. Let's talk slow murders! Alright, slow murder shows. For those who are looking to get into slow murder shows, okay? If the up-and-coming otaku friend is a person who would think that they would like a slow murder show, but they don't know what slow murder show to watch, ladies and gentlemen, let me, the certified Japanaholic, introduce to you Eurocap. Let me introduce to you the best slow murder show to ever grace our gracious anime earth. Eurocap is by far the single greatest slow murder show. I can't say it. It's trying to say slow murder show 10 times fast. Slow murder show. Can't do it. But it is the best slow murder show to ever grace our gracious anime earth. And I would fight to the death, and I will fight to the death about this, that it's one of the best shows ever. I'll fight you bastards to the death if you would disagree with me. I'll fight you. Because where else can you get a show with amazing characters, amazing seiyus, amazing animations? Good job, C Station. Shout out to C Station. Amazing sceneries, amazing storytelling, even though it's all about camping. How can you do that? Eurocap does it, and it does it 10 out of 10 perfectly, okay? My podcast episode, which is technically the first podcast episode on Spotify, where I sat in my truck on a cold winter day talking about this series. It still does not hold up to how much I love that series, okay? I'd rank it 100 out of a 10, okay? It's just that damn good, alright? Now, am I a little overexcited about this series? No. I still say that if you show this series to somebody who is looking to get into like slow murder shows, they'll instantly fall in love. Like I said, all the characters and their seiyus fit perfectly well. All the animations with the sceneries fit perfectly well. I'll be honest though, if it was made by Koito Animations, it would have just been just that bit better. But I'll take what Steins Gates should give us. All right. And man, when a series gives you the bestest best girl to have ever been a girl, and I'm talking about Shibani, by the way, you know it's a good series. You know it's a good series. Okay. But there is also another slow burner show that that I compare Eurocap to that a lot of people should watch, and that is A Place Farther Than the Universe. This one is about traveling, and I will admit that would probably reach a bigger audience than what camping would, but at the same time, is a good show that I would recommend watching. Okay? There is a lot of good anime shows that I could recommend watching, and a lot of good, shows that deserve, a good, 15 time rewatch or whatever, like K-On! Or Eurocap or whatever. Okay? I will probably give off another podcast episode where I will talk about animes I would not recommend watching, which probably won't happen until I start watching some terrible ass animes, because of the fact that I really can't talk much about shitty animes, because I don't watch too much shitty animes. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't. Now, before I turn off this week's podcast episode, and allow you to do whatever you want to afterwards, there's one genre that I have not talked about today, which is drama. Okay? Drama shows are very popular in terms of the anime industry. Okay? And there's way too many drama shows for me to list off, but I'll give off 2 of them. I'll give off 2. 2 of these I would recommend watching if you're looking for something, to watch that has a lot of drama. Now, I'm pretty sure every romance anime and comedy anime or whatever gives off these dramatic vibes or whatever. But these 2 I'm going to talk about here, I recommend being the highest in terms of drama. Okay? Now, if you want more anime recommendations, go check out the Underrated Anime podcast episode, where I literally talk about much more animes and stuff like that I think people should watch. But I'll give off 2 more, and then I'll call it an episode, as much as I have 5 more that I can easily talk about here. Okay. The first one I want to talk about is, it does have romance in it, but I want to talk about the Bunny Girl Senpai series. Okay. Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai is a supernatural romance series, but the drama is the tip of the iceberg. Okay, the very tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg tip or whatever is 20 feet high, whereas the rest of the iceberg is 30. It's very half and half, but drama is, of course, a big part of this series. While this does have a Kokoro Connect feel to it, that's hard to say, right? Which I've discussed in the Kokoro Connect anime discussions video podcast episode, which I recommend that series, but since I've already done a whole podcast episode on it, go ahead and watch that one before recommending it to, the up-and-coming otaku friend, of course. So, with the Bunny Girl Senpai series, it's basically the God damn it, I messed it up again. Kokoro Connect series, but I would really recommend watching it because of the fact that all the drama that builds up is very, very hard-hitting. And it will pull a few tears here and there, okay? Especially when you watch the movie, which watching the movie made me cry like a bitch. I'll admit that. But I also cried watching the K-On! Movie. So you can take that in 2 ways. Whether I have a very, very high tolerance for drama or a very low tolerance for drama in terms of how my body can handle it. So there's that. But I would recommend watching the Bunny Girl Senpai series just because of the fact that it is a super, super dramatic drama. And it has to do with a lot of relationships and stuff like that. But the relationships and basically the dialogue also tends to be a lot more realistic than most other anime shows in general. But if we also want to talk about realistic kind of things and stuff like that, as much as I laugh at saying realistic because it may be a little over dramatic, I'll say. If you want to watch a good series on drama, Okay, probably the top of the list, like S tier drama. Okay, if we're talking tier list here. Let's talk about the Oregayu series. Let's talk about the My Romantic Teen Comedy Snafu series, okay? Which has its climax season being aired right now, and it's about to hit its climax. Pun intended. All puns intended. So I would really recommend watching the Oregayu series just because of the fact that it's really dramatic and stuff like that. Also, Best Girl is voiced by the best Seiyu, who also voiced Shibadeen and Kirisaki from Nissa Koi. Just saying. Just saying. Also, Ruka from Kanasho wa Kaidashimasu. Just saying. Best girls always get played by the best Seiyus. Anyway. So, I really recommend watching the Oregayu series because, especially recommending it, because the dub, I'll say this again, as much as I love listening to Adam Gibbs, okay, the dub, I would really recommend showing it in the dub, okay, because trying to understand everything being said in Japanese sometimes gets lost, very lost in the head of viewers, especially for me. But then again, it just depends on what your mindset is going into this. It is a very deep drama show about wanting something genuine. And if you don't go into watching the series thinking about how deep the series can be and how, very subtle a lot of things can be said, and a lot of the dialogues have a lot deeper meaning than just being spoken into a microphone or, subtitles being shown on the screen. That has a lot deeper meaning behind it. If you don't go into watching the series thinking about that, you're going to be lost, okay? So think about that when watching this, amazing drama show, okay? Let me tell you, it's a real good show. I would recommend watching it. I would recommend reading all the source materials as well, or if in some cases, like you're sort of downloading it and playing it, like the visual novel / arrogant kind of things. And they do happen every once in a while. That you'll find a series where it's like based off of a game or visual novel. Now, I'll probably talk more about what I think about visual novels because as much as I love visual novels and stuff like that, I do think I could do a podcast episode on my thoughts and opinions on anime adaptations of visual novels and stuff like that. But I think they'll cover it for this episode. I think it was relatively shorter compared to the other episodes that have been coming out in the past few weeks. Or maybe just be just as long. I don't fucking know. I can't see my timer down there. All I know is that, the background changed while I was recording, scared the shit out of me. That's all I know about my TV screen right now. TV/monitor while I'm in my living room. So if you do enjoy this podcast episode, please leave a like if you're watching the video on YouTube and click the follow button on wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening onto, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Podcast Republic, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and so on and so forth. And please share out this podcast with fellow Japanaholics or somebody who is not a fellow Japanaholic to get them to becoming a fellow Japanaholic. And if you really want somebody to become an anime fanatic, and you want to show them series that is not from the mainstream, like the obvious picks like Dragon Ball or whatever, then you would probably want to show them a few of these series that I just listed off here today. But anyways, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of the Japanaholic podcast. I will be back next Wednesday and Saturday to do it all over again. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. My name's Taylor, the certified Japanaholic, signing off. Good night.